What's up, everybody? My name's Big Cam and welcome back to another movie review. And today we are talking about 2025's now streaming on Netflix, Anaconda, from director Tom Gormican, who I don't necessarily recognize from his work. It does say he was the writer of Anaconda and director of Anaconda, but he also wrote things like Beverly Hills Cop Axel F in 2024, so maybe that's how he got this role with Netflix. He also wrote and directed The Awkward Moment back in 2014 with Miles Teller, Zac Efron, and Michael B. Jordan. I kind of like that movie. He also did The Unbearable Weight of Massive Talent with Pedro Pascal and Nicolas Cage a couple years ago, and now he's doing Anaconda. He produced, he wrote, and he directed this film, and it's not bad. It's about 100 minutes, so just over an hour and a half, hour 40 minutes, and that's with credits, I think. But this film stars, of course, Paul Rudd and Jack Black, and they're playing two longtime friends, like they're not playing themselves. And Steve Zahn's also in there as a hilarious character. Thandiwe Newton, I think I said that right, maybe not. But either way, Thandiwe Newton, she plays a character in here. She's pretty great. She's maybe like kind of a love interest to Paul Rudd's character. Daniela Melchior is underused in this, but she's kind of like, somebody that's helping them, but also she's like a gold miner robber of some sorts in this. And I think she was underused in this, and then kind of just disappears, and you're like, come on. She's too gorgeous, and they kind of put the silencers on her. Maybe she was one of those things where it's like they're supposed to be out in the jungle in Brazil, and it's like, okay, you're supposed to be covered in mud, but yet this girl is so gorgeous that it's just like, okay, it's almost distracting how gorgeous she is. But yet she still is a badass. I love Daniela Melchior, and she should do more work. And she's been in little things like, I don't know, the Suicide Squad movie with James Gunn, and she was Ratcatcher 2, where he also put the silencers on her in that movie, and you're like, come on, dude. Why can't we just have Daniela Melchior play a gorgeous character in a movie, I think that's like more her role in Fast X, in like Roadhouse, the remake with Jake Gyllenhaal. But she's only done 13 films, and she should be in much more stuff. Shout out Daniela Melchior. But also, Shelton Mello played Santiago, and he was a hilarious character that was just unexpected, and was just funny, but also you're like, holy, who the fuck is this Santiago guy? He's like the snake wrangler. And then like, spoilers for anybody that doesn't want Anaconda spoiled for them. Shelton Mello's character of Santiago dies at one point, and you're like, he's not coming back, he got taken by the snake. And then all of a sudden, at the end of the movie, he's like, I'm alive! I'm alive! And you're like, oh, well, maybe if they ever do a sequel, maybe Santiago will be back. But I loved that, like, this didn't have anything to do with the OG Anaconda, and this was kind of like a remake, but kind of its own reimagining of it. And, I don't know if I've ever actually seen the OG Anaconda. It was never well reviewed, and I was never a big snake guy. My mother is terrified of snakes, so there's like a couple of jump scares in this movie where, like, it's coming, it just gets silent, and then the snake jumps up in front of camera, and you're like, Jesus Christ, why would you do that to me? Like, I don't like scary movies necessarily, but more so than the scary movie itself, I don't like jump scares, for the sake of just jumping you. Like, I don't like to go like this, I'm watching, I'm very, tuned in, and then all of a sudden I'm like, like I just got hit with a flash grenade or something. Like, no thanks. But I also thought it was really funny that Ice Cube shows up in this, and he's like, motherfucker, who'd you think it was, John Voight? And then at the very, very end, J-Lo, Jenny from the Block, shows up, and she's like, I loved your movie that you didn't have the rights to make. Well, we liked it, and we want you to direct the next one. So if they do another Anaconda movie, hopefully Paul Rudd and Jack Black will be back, but maybe they team up with Ice Cube and J-Lo, and they do like a more synced up, together version of Anaconda, rather than this like indie budget film that they're filming themselves in the middle of the jungle, and like everything goes to shit. Like, I enjoyed this, but like it was dumb. Like, it's so dumb and stupid and funny. But because Paul Rudd and Jack Black are taking it seriously, seriously enough that you're like willing to stick around. You know what I mean? Like, if they were just phoning it in and not even trying, maybe you'd be like not engaged, and if they weren't having a good time acting together, maybe this would be a shit movie. It's still not great, but like it's reaches like okay, good level of movie because Paul Rudd and Jack Black work so well together. And like now that like I've seen them together, I'm like, god damn, can we get Paul Rudd over in that Super Mario universe and working with Jack Black some more? Because they're hilarious together. I don't know how they haven't worked together yet, because they need to do more stuff for sure. You know, Jack and Paul very synced up with their comic timing and like, you know, their ability to be like, you know, water the eyes and really take a moment serious, but then also end it with a joke, you know, but remain with that straight face so you don't break and crack and then the audience falls out of it, you know what I mean? But, you know, even Steve Zahn in this has some lines where you're like, I didn't know Steve Zahn was that funny. You're like, I knew Steve Zahn was a great actor and he was funny, but he is hilarious in this, you know, even funnier than like his character in White Lotus. You know, like he's a little sad in White Lotus. In this, he's just funny as hell. And he's like, still kind of sad as Kenny. Kenny's like a drunk, but he's like, I'm not sober, I'm Buffalo sober, which means I'm just doing beer and wine. And then he's like, he goes, you fucked up again, Kenny, you fucked it. Like, oh god, there is some funny parts. And the snake, for the most part, looks pretty good for like a ginormous CGI snake. But yes, this movie is streaming on Netflix right now, and I watched it last night because it was late and I didn't want to start something else that was an hour longer. So I was like, yeah, I'll watch a little hour and a half movie before bed here. And I was glad I stuck around because it was funny enough that it gave me some laughs and kept me engaged and kept me smiling, but not like funny that I'm gonna write home like this is the best comedy of the year or anything like that. And I'm very glad I didn't end up going to the theaters during Christmas of last year to see Anaconda. Like, not exactly a Christmas movie, but I wonder what Anaconda's budget and, you know, box office was for 2026. So apparently the 1997 Anaconda film had a budget of approximately $45 million and successfully reached 136.8 million as a worldwide box office. So, you know, successful, but not that successful. So it seems the 2025 remake of Anaconda was even less successful and had the same budget of around $45 million, which in 2025 goes a lot less than it did in 1997, but they only achieved about $43.6 million globally in its opening initial weekend. So, opening weekend, but how much did it make total? Oh, it made comparatively the same amount. You know, what did I say was the last one? 136 mil. This made 134 mil worldwide, and it made 65 million domestically. So technically a success. I'm not too mad at it for like Christmas of 2025, which this is not a Christmas movie. Guys, like if you're gonna put out Anaconda, that's like a summer movie if The Odyssey isn't in theaters, you know what I mean? Like, if there's gonna be Marvel stuff and bigger stuff during the summers, yeah, you need to find a spot for this, but I would have put this closer to Halloween time, and I think people would have gone to see it more than around Christmas time. You know, like, there's certain people around Christmas that are only watching Christmas movies, and they're not watching anything else, you know? So, even this Christmas coming up, they want us to watch Harry Potter around Christmas. They want us to watch Dune Part 3 around Christmas. Avengers Doomsday on the same day. And then, you know, there's a werewolf movie from Robert Eggers coming out on Christmas Day. And I really like werewolves, but like, you know, if that came out in Halloween time, I might... Or I would 100% be in theaters for a Halloween werewolf movie. But a Christmas werewolf movie, you know, might be harder for me to wrap my head around going, you know, leaving the house on Christmas Day to go see a werewolf film scare the pants out of me. You know, like, that's not really Christmas vibes, you know? Like, I feel if you're gonna do like a horror type of movie for Christmas, you might as well do like a violent Santa or violent night with David Harbour there. Where like, yeah, it's a rated R Santa, but it's still real Santa and Christmassy, you know, like rather than a scary monster movie. But, you know, maybe Christmas will suck this year, so I'll be able to check out and go to the movies, and maybe that'll work out, who knows. But just to wrap it up here, the Letterboxd synopsis for this movie reads, a comedy so big it'll leave you breathless. A group of friends facing midlife crises head to the rainforest with the intention of remaking their favorite movie from their youth, only to find themselves in a fight for their lives against natural disasters, giant snakes, and violent criminals. What natural disaster do they face? I don't think they face natural disasters other than a snake. But, I don't know, maybe that is the natural disaster. But either way, violent criminals for sure, and giant snakes for sure. There's one giant snake that Paul Rudd brutally murders, and poor Santiago is mourning, and then there's a bigger snake that's out in the woods and is massive. But there's, like, you know, the snake for the most part looks good, and some of the action scenes with the snake, you're like, okay, this is like where they put their money into that CGI snake right here. But for the most part, it's just dumb and funny. The part with Jack Black and the warthog pig on his back as he's running, and he's like, what the fuck's on my back? You know, they put a dead squirrel in his mouth thinking Jack's dead, and he wakes up. And it's like, oh shit, you know. But overall, I gave this film about 3 out of 5 stars, about a 6 out of 10. If I had to give it a true 10 score, it's probably like a 6.3, you know, like pretty low 6, but, you know, definitely not a 6.5 or 7. Definitely a 3 out of 5 stars. And that's where I'm going to leave it. And maybe one day I'll go back and watch the 97 Anaconda, and comment below if that's something you'd like to see. But also comment below, what have you been watching right now? Is there any other movies that just came out on Netflix or any of the other streaming platforms that you've been watching? I'd love to hear that. And please drop your movie recommendations for me down in the comment section below. And drop your thoughts and score for this film out of 5 or 10 stars down in the comment section. Or you can send them to me on my other social medias. Links for those down in the description below. Once again, my name's Big Cam. Thank you guys so much for sticking around this far into the video, and I will see you gorgeous folks in the next one. Peace.